I've asked Norm just to start us off and explain a little bit about his case and what he's asked you to do. And then I understand you will be giving one joint presentation, but taking turns speaking, correct?
Yes.
All right, Norm, take it away.
Well, thank you, everybody. First, I want to say that working with my Argentine friends has been delightful. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. The insights, I've gained insights into the problem through my interaction with all of you. And I've really enjoyed our interactions, and I intend to use your recommendations in my advocacy work going forward. So thank you so much. I'm going to briefly just go over what we have done together. And then for the record, because this is being recorded and I hope to use this recording in the future, I'm going to briefly go through my slides again, just to set the stage for your report. So what did we do? Well, we developed a solution to address Middle Rio Grande water governance through the Peace engineering framework. We focused on the background and issues of the water resources and the water resources governance. In the Middle Rio Grande, we looked at water supply, water demand, the mismatch between the two, water rights. We reviewed the passive administration of water rights by state government. There's no quantification of water rights, no capacity to manage human water demands. We talked about the self-serving missions and actions of Middle Rio Grande water institutions, and noted that only these institutions have water demand management capacity. We reviewed the current water depletions in the Middle Rio Grande and the fact that excessive depletions deprive downstream users of the water supply that they're entitled to receive legally. We talked about the complex cultural setting of the Middle Rio Grande. You know, that the heart of that are the 6 Middle Rio Grande pueblos and additional pueblos on the tributaries. This is an ancient Spanish setting, colony, and the ancient Spanish acequias still exist. Irrigation is a common cultural value. Almost to the point of being sacred among many people, and certainly the pueblos. There are very diverse views on water, ranging the whole gamut from sacred, water is sacred, to water is a commodity and should be available on the market to be bought and sold. Relevant data to deal with these problems are scattered. They're not in interoperable databases that are publicly available. We talked about advocacy efforts over the last 20 years and the fact that they've really not brought any government focus to the Middle Rio Grande problem. When asked about water, most people in New Mexico, when asked about New Mexico's most serious problems, people who respond, they don't mention water because it's not at the top of their minds. When asked about water, they agree that it is an urgent problem and urgently needs solutions. So you have the dichotomy of the underlying problem not being at the top of people's minds. They're too busy with the other things. And that's because the current water situation is not urgent, but if we continue, the status quo is disastrous. Our state legislature is composed of unpaid volunteers without staff. It's very hard for them to formulate policy themselves, and they have a hard time accepting policy that is developed by others. So I asked the Argentine scholars to review this problem from their perspectives through the 3 Peace engineering lenses, and they've worked hard to understand our water governance issues in the Middle Rio Grande and to prepare their recommendations. And very quickly, again, for the record, I'm going to go through the slides. We talked about, the Middle Rio Grande has defined geographic boundaries. It's the area between the two stars on the map, between the Otoe Gauge upstream and Elephant Butte Dams downstream. Rio Grande inflows at the Otoe Gauge are apportioned for use in the Middle Rio Grande and use downstream of the Middle Rio Grande. The Middle Rio Grande's depletions are capped at 405,000 acre-feet per year of those inflows in the Rio Grande main stem. At the bottom end, we have Elephant Butte Dam and the huge reservoir that is backed up by Elephant Butte Dam, which now is mostly empty. Heron Reservoir contains imported water for the Middle Valley, imported under the Continental Divide from Colorado, and it was promised as the source of much of our municipal water supplies in the Middle Rio Grande. Our water budgets are outdated, but a water budget prepared in around 2000 for the 2000 development conditions based on hydrology from the 50s through 2000 shows that on average, we consume more water than we are legally entitled to. That's why if you're at the bottom of this graphic, it shows a deficit. And additionally, we are depleting groundwater storage from the Rio Grande's interconnected tributary aquifers. Riparian evapotranspiration is the largest component of water use in the Middle Valley. Irrigated agriculture is second. Reservoir evaporation is third. Open water evaporation from the river is fourth, and the urban development takes a relatively small slice of the river, but it is depleting groundwater and will eventually deplete the river. And these data are out of date because they were developed around some of the wettest times in New Mexico, and now we are in New Mexico's driest times, and it's going to get worse. We have a history of compliance and lack of compliance with our delivery obligations to the folks downstream, and the trend right now is down. This is a blow up of the downward trend, and we are threatened with a violation, or rather our inaction could likely cause a violation of the compact delivery requirements as soon as this year. Our work together in the Middle Valley has to be to prevent the tragedy of the Middle Rio Grande water commons. Our charge is how will we transition to sustainable resilience. And water governance right now is not up to or addressing the task in any coherent way. The public says when asked about water that we must improve the governance of water in the Middle Valley, and that sustainability is an urgent problem. So I've set the stage. We are anxiously awaiting your recommendations. Thank you.
So the main thing of the problems, as I said before, is that it's a very complex problem. It's multi-causal. So we're going to begin to define the problem statement by talking about a few of the key things that we believe are constant for the process. Okay, so the main thing is that water is a fundamental human right. It was agreed by the General Assembly of the United Nations in 2010, and it means that we must take water problems into account from a human rights standpoint. And this is something which is very clear in this case because we found out that we were trying a problem that the unequal access to water and primarily the most vulnerable population, which in this case is the Native Americans. The most vulnerable population here are Native Americans and the poor nation. They are particularly impacted by scarcity in water because they are mostly farmers. They need the water to survive each year. And the problem is compounded by the fact that they don't have any seat at the table. And this is something that the six board is trying to do right now. They're trying to gain a seat and be able to sustain their sovereign rights, which are being attacked right now. As here, they have the most in water and the law, but in practice, this is not like that.
So I'll go ahead with the process. And while we were making this research and trying to find the causes in order to provide solutions in the long term, we decided to establish a criteria based on two main factors. The first one is related to consumption, whether the water utilized is consumptive or the water is supplied. And taking this into account, we said, okay, is water consumptive by humans or it's nature induced? Or is it water supplies human induced or nature induced? So taking into account the first factor, we understood that consumption is related to a human behavior. And mostly activities, traditions, and practices in the Middle Rio Grande have created not only a misunderstanding, but also a misuse of the water resource. And apart from this, in the society, the series of institutions and also different practices have legitimized and institutionalized these practices. So taking into account the human induced water consumption, we have see that there are three main factors related to this utilization. There's a lack of consumption regulations and enforcement developed by the local government. There's a political stagnation and institutional gridlock, and also there's a lack of public awareness related to this area. So we can clearly see that there's not a local and governmental level or an interrelation between the local districts and the New Mexico government in terms of water usage and in terms of regulations. And apart from this, if we speak about nature, we can see that climate change have played a major role in this side, saying that weather have increased among the years and temperatures have increased as well, creating a situation where consumers are trying to utilize more water than actually what they actually have. So in terms of water consumption, this is the first point. And in terms of water supplies, we can say that human induced activities like wildfires and the Middle Rio Grande Compact are the two main points to highlight. Because, for example, wildfires are the main activity or are one of the activities that utilize the most carbon dioxide products. And as well, the Middle Rio Grande Compact was a bill that was presented in March 2023 that wanted to create a regional water program and to take concerns about the public welfare, but it didn't clearly explain what it is public welfare. So these are the two main points in terms of human induced. And in terms of nature induced, we can see that there's a riparian ecosystem, high temperatures, an overall dry climate, and a geological structure and terrain that diminish water supply causes. Now we're going to pass to installations. Thank you.
Okay, so what we did with identifying the process and defining the problem was following the framework that Norm had presented for us, the engineering problem solving steps. So we understood the problem, its causes, and we understood that there was an excess in consumption and a shortage in supply. And so then what we did was to take the dimensions of engineering and use that framework to propose the solutions, which was another of the steps of STEM framework. So to begin with, we considered both the environment and the sustainability axis, and then also the health policies framework that we know. And so also the JEDI would be words, and we drafted a series of solutions. I'm going to present only the first one, and then we'll go on. Give a little introduction. So the first solution focuses on promoting policies and actions that create incentives to reduce the irregular and the excessive consumption of water. So tackling the consumption side of the crisis. And this is both for domestic and commercial use in general. We understood that water and water rights and water consumption is a very sensitive topic in the region for the local population. And so we decided to prioritize positive incentives rather than the negative ones, because we thought that that would be a more approach. So the idea is that these incentives not only raise awareness about the problem of water, to put in place the water in the agenda, also to facilitate the enforcement of already existing regulations that are in place and that are not enforced properly. So the actions in this first solution for incentives is propose a waiver of local taxes for both farmers and households for them to install meters, so that there could be a record of their water consumption, so that that data is produced and is collected and then it is utilized. And then following that, we proposed a system that is like color coded, sort of like traffic light system. It's not for imposing penalties or sanctions, rather it's to showcase each consumer, each household, each rural establishment of how much they are consuming. We did not establish the technical uses for each color or color grading. That's for engineers to manage, I think. Yeah. But the idea is that we can foster awareness of how much people are consuming. So if someone sees a red light in their consumption, they can see that they are really misusing water, and they can be more aware of their consumption habits. And finally, we thought about including a graphic representation in each like little either water like spilling report that the customer might receive, so that there's a standardized measure of water volume in, so that people can easily recognize how much water they are consuming. We did not define a specific measure, but it happened to us when you were presenting that you were talking about acre-feet, and we used the metric system. So we didn't know specifically how much an acre-feet was. It was like a football field, and that really shocked us when we realized that. So we thought that maybe extending that realization to the public might raise more awareness and might reduce water consumption. So if you see that you consume 3 soccer fields of water in a month, it will likely reduce how much water you're consuming. So
okay, so moving on to the second solution, and continuing with that data journey that Emilio had introduced as well. We also spotted the necessity of having data to create data-driven or evidence-based policies. And we mapped, with the help of norms, of course, that there was already a Water Data Act in New Mexico that was enacted in 2019. And we thought of ideas on how to strengthen the efforts of that Water Data Act and the stakeholders that were involved around that water data. So our second solution is to strengthen the state agency charged with the implementation of that data that I mentioned, as well as other agencies that may own relevant data, but that is not integrated or compiled or shared among each other. So that these efforts of data gathering, data collection, data communication, data integration can be or help base policy or water policy. Of course, there's not only state produce data. There's also other stakeholders such as NGOs or privates that can also be used in order to strengthen these efforts. And in the long term, as Martina said, this would also aim at raising awareness and influencing the public agenda on water issues in Municipal. The concrete actions that we thought for this specific solution revolve around establishing agreements with Rio Grande Valley universities and other stakeholders to strengthen existing databases. So what we mapped is that this data is not unified or concentrated in just one spot. So it would be great to have other stakeholders such as universities jump on board and collaborate on these efforts. Also, like Martina said, metering is really important in order to solve this potential crisis. So we also wanted to foster a new line of research that will study and develop technologies for water metering. This also could create a domino effect or rippling effect that would build capacity in other similar contexts through knowledge transfer. And last but not least, and in order to, if data is sitting still, it doesn't change or has any impact. So we want data to be communicated. And what we mapped is that some of these agencies or stakeholders probably have the capacity to create databases, but are not communicating that data to a massive audience properly. So what we suggested was to establish a communication group across the state water agencies to focus on generating awareness and generating this impact through media pieces that are aimed both at decision makers and the general audience.
Okay, so the second, or actually it's the third thing that we analyze on, sorry, is the gender perspective. So the first one is favorite, as you all know, which is the legal perspective. And what we identify here is where many legal issues, especially as Norm said, with the litigation on the Supreme Court about the lower Rio Grande, and then also with this new Senate bill, state Senate bill, that has been recently passed. We realized that there were maybe some actions that could be taken on that level. So the first one that we identify is that maybe one thing that can be done is to further analysis of the protections that the Middle Rio Grande has, either federal laws or the New Mexico's constitution that actually protects the use of the resources, maybe to get protection for future legal, we hope not, but future legal procedures. And then one good idea that we thought along with the group was to align with legal pro bono groups for a future legal complaint. Very recently, just 2 weeks ago, I believe, the Supreme Court issued a case called Held by Montana versus Montana, which is a case filed by 16 young people from Montana, which are suing the state because they believe that their right to the safe environment is being threatened. So maybe if that case goes well, and we hope that will happen, it would be a very good background in case that the state of Mexico wants to file a claim for the Rio Grande. And then another very important thing is to promote the adoption of a definition of public welfare in the Senate Bill 337 that was passed last April. The state of New Mexico decided to not to protect, but to be aware of the water rights and use the concept of public welfare. But as of now, that concept has not been defined. So we created that definition that you can see over there in order to define, of course, public welfare. The second solution that we are proposing is to reform New Mexico's water governance. In this case, is to improve the water management agencies' capacities for them to act under a gender perspective. And here also what we thought of 4 actions, which are build capacity on at the state and local level, which is that means we provide a training to the agencies in order for them to know how to better act in the case of water management. Also to unify monitoring report systems to track how water is used, and maybe that could be done on a state level to understand how people are using water and connect with each other to know how different parts of the state are using the water. The third thing would be to, of course, use those tribal systems and use maybe the university capacities in order to develop those systems to detect the illegal water use. And the fourth thing would be to develop a transparent and accessible system so people know how to register better for water rights and establish clear procedures. And the third solution will be to improve the water supply and resilience of the most vulnerable groups. And that means to ensure that all communities have equal access to the water supplies, especially in the face of climate change. And for that, we suggest to create a complete adjudication of the future rights of water for pueblos, particularly, and help the local communities to develop those infrastructure projects, and especially to create systems to face the cases in which there are pollution or water contamination, as we saw in Valle del Oro. And there are many companies that are established and are polluting the water systems.
Hello. So the fourth solution that we discussed in our group was fostering collaboration with academia. And when we understood this, is in like it's a two-way solution. It will be fostering collaboration with academics from different disciplines. So it will be transdisciplinary research. But at the same time, the idea is to foster an alliance between the academia and other actors, like government agencies, local non-profitable organizations, the civil society. The idea is to, of course, we need funds for this. We need funds that are able to allow us to conduct this type of research. And what we thought would be nice is to establish an interdisciplinary research consortium. This could lead to the establishment of a sort of monitoring body that would be responsible for basically what we noticed when we were making our research was the lack of accountability in different actors in the water usage. So it would be nice to have that, and also like to have a body that is able to suggest or propose new policies as the situation evolves. Because of course we're talking about climate adaptation, climate change, so these things change very fast. We can go from like years of like flooding to years of drought. So we need to be flexible, and this body would allow to have that. And I think the key part of this solution would be the fact that we would have data-driven policy, which I think is very important. We need the feedback from the teachers, we need the feedback from the community, and at the same time, this will allow to enhance community engagement and education, which is related with the next solution that we are proposing. But our focus on this, and you will be able to see this in the following solution. Is our focus is on vulnerable communities, and we need to ask their participation. They need to be at the center of the table. And as I said, this is connected with the fifth solution, which is about reinforcing community participation. And in this issue, we cannot disregard the voices of the Indian pueblos and other native tribes as the original, ancestral, and first right holders. We haven't mentioned this so far, but last year they started legal action to get their water rights in a way to basically reassert their sovereignty, which has been so much disregarded, and also as a way of quantifying their water rights. So we need their input, and we need to do this in a way that is inclusive. And for this, we need to open the table, open the discussion, and facilitate inclusive public forums in which everyone is able to participate. Of course, not only indigenous populations, but also like local communities, especially communities of color, which we know are predominant here in New Mexico. Above all, I think also with the help from like the previous solution, we would be able to provide training for climate adaptation, climate science, policy advice, and also advocacy, and that is connected with we have like a whole section about water advocacy campaign, which the next some of my other colleagues will present. But the whole aim of this solution is to co-create adaptation strategies with communities, using their ancestral knowledge, using their traditional practices, or they know the land. They have been living here for a very long time. So probably the solution, they already know the solution, but we need to give them the space to tell us what to do. And we must also not forget that we are standing on a land that belongs to them first, on our sharing. So without further ado, I will give the floor to the next group.
Public alliance, but we really focus more on agriculture because, as Norman showed before, the biggest human use of water in the Middle Rio Grande Valley is agriculture. It's about a quarter of the total use of food. So we experimented with a few solutions, but we realized that, well, we like it or not, we live in a capitalist society, and so we must have a solution that makes economic sense to the farmers. So we thought that the best way to promote the efficient use of water is to create a system of monetary incentives, like tax breaks and like cheap rates for installation of one irrigation system, with the objective of encouraging farmers to adopt a better use of water. This obviously necessitates, as a necessary condition, a sine qua non condition, the establishment of a comprehensive system of water measurement, which is something that other groups talked before, and they probably talked about the future too. But yeah, the main idea is to create like a tier system. So if you have a water use per acre lower than say X or Y, then you get a significant tax rate in your tax.
So as Sebastian said, we were aware that we should put a tax system in order to make a cost-benefit calculation for farmers and people who are dedicated to agriculture. So we said, okay, we can think about a lot of options that go this way, but we actually need a way to make them effective. And we realized that there is no authority for the whole Middle Valley here in New Mexico that would be able to enforce this kind of policy. That's why we thought of the creation of a new authority. It should be, it should have the capacity to effectively address the water scarcity issue here. What we thought about is that this authority should, to begin with, establish some goals of consumption. Secondly, it should measure how much water it is used mainly by farmers in this case. Then it should be able to control and to monitor the water that it is used. And after that, to enforce a sustainable way of using water, of water consumption in the agriculture part of New Mexico. So what I also wanted to tell you about is that this authority should be created by a law made by the legislature of the state of New Mexico, because it should have jurisdiction not only at the urban part, for example, Albuquerque, but also to the whole Middle Valley. That's right. We also wanted to put up as a concrete activity the collaboration with universities. Because we thought that in order to get these changes done, we also need some legitimation. That legitimation should come from knowledge, and that knowledge also comes mainly from universities and higher level education. So that's why we would foster collaboration and cooperation with universities that should tell the professionals, or that should teach professionals in agriculture, for example, the way in which water would be more efficiently used. And this would be, for example, changing the irrigation systems that they have here in the Middle Valley, and also changing the irrigation and also the crops that are cultivated here for more suitable crops for this kind of territory. That's it. So we think that once we have achieved this and the previous activities that have been given by my partners, we think that we should have some economic benefits. If the farmers and all other actors make like a cost-benefit calculation, they would get to the conclusion that it is actually better for them to use less water, because they would pay less taxes, they would use more suitable crops, and that would make the production higher. And in that way, if we implement these policies, we would create a benefit for them, so they would join in these policies. As well, for example, if we change the irrigation systems, this has there should be some money put in this activity. So this would also enhance companies and enterprises which are dedicated to irrigation systems. And all these would also return to people who need jobs and who would use these, for example, these changes as a source for new jobs. So everybody would be happy, and this would need a moderate change, not a profound change that maybe wouldn't be allowed for from some stakeholders here in New Mexico. So that's it.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point about crops, because the current status right now is that, and we talked this with farmers last weekend, is to grow alfalfa because it's very heavily mechanized. And there's a problem finding people to work, so they choose to do that, and in the process they end up wasting a lot of more water in a crop that is not that necessary. So, for example, making an economic case for the changing from one crop to another, from say alfalfa to pecan nuts or whatever, would not only be more efficient from a water use standpoint, but it would also lead to the creation of more jobs, since that kind of crops require a larger workforce.
Okay, so our team, the last one, decided to include in the final recommendation report to address the water problem in Middle Rio Grande, a proposal for a water advocacy campaign. After spending almost 3 weeks in the University of New Mexico, visiting experts, having interviewed politicians, asking about water in every meeting we had, visiting different cities, because we've been in Albuquerque, in Santa Fe, in the state, also visiting research centers. It seemed, but above all, getting to know the community of New Mexico, it seemed essential to us to include solutions from the community, for the community, in addition to all the public policy recommendations that we were working as a group. So inspired by Nathan's class about advocacy, we decided to propose this water advocacy campaign that we have called Water is Life. So a central problem we detected in norms classes was that science struggles with a measure gap between research and public opinion, and that was like a common conclusion in several meetings we had. Because investigations continue to find problems, propose solutions that don't reach people. So, for example, here in New Mexico, we are in a critical situation regarding water use, but research shows that this is not the main concern for its population. So as a team, it's an important theme, but it's not the main concern, and the situation is critical. So as a team, we ask ourselves, how can we empower people to take action? How can we mobilize community to first achieve a social change and then pushes a political change? When designing this campaign, we inspire in this photograph, Water is Life. This is a real photograph we saw in our visit to the Albuquerque Museum. It's a photograph that was taken by Danny Leon, who's an American filmmaker and photographer, and also an activist for civil rights here in the Southwest. It called the attention of several of us, so we used it as a trigger for this campaign. And we decided that the general slogan for this campaign will be, water is life, do your part. Because we think that for a community problem, we have to think in a community-driven solution. And we think that this message encapsulates the core message of our campaign, because it both, on the one hand, emphasizes the profound importance of water for life, something very, very basic, but it also emphasizes the collective responsibility we all have, all the community have, in conserving this resource. Water is life. It's a reminder of the essential role that water has in sustaining all forms of life on Earth. So I have only 1 minute, but we have designed 3 specific audiences for this campaign and 3 specific messages. These are the short ones, but we have included in our final report, a specific communication strategy for each audience. And this would be to politicians and decision makers. What we want to ask is measure the problem first. The first step is to measure the problem and give us, as a community, real information of in which situation in Mexico and Middle Rio Grande is regarding its water use, and then rule the problem according to that information. The second target or the second audience would be the urban community, and the message is be responsible of your water consumption. Water is a shared resource, and every individual action impacts on the whole community. And the third target would be the rural community that we've been talking long throughout the whole presentation. And the message is transition to low consumption, water crops, and farming techniques, thinking in the long term of the community and of our Earth as well. Well, these are the following actions that we identified to do this campaign here in New Mexico. First, the diagnosis and social listening to know the people's stories and what is the importance they give to the water here. Second, the stakeholders map and islands to identify all the key actors and potential alliances to develop a network who will stand for this campaign. Then the strategy and goals. Here, well, like I said, our campaign is based on the main message of water is life, do your part. So we want to embrace the population to follow this campaign, and then the action plan. In this part, the key is the collaboration with policymakers, with government, and with all the academia to, to embrace the campaign. Yeah. And we have a preview of this campaign. We made a review of the campaign.
Well, yeah, I don't want to say much. I don't want to spoil it, but so just to say that it doesn't want to express a lot of information. The message with the words at the beginning, it's much more about conveying the information visually. Its art style is supposed to be raw and concise. And that's it. We hope you enjoyed, especially you, Norm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that is the thing that is so outstanding and valuable about your work is that you have encapsulated the big picture of the problem, and you have crystallized actions that we need to take, to become sustainably resilient. I love your campaign. I love your recommendations, and I've really loved working with you. Thank you so much.
So I think we have to take you to Madison Avenue in New York for advertising. Did a great job. And I was wondering, with the slogan you developed and the attention to the users, frankly, unawareness, lack of awareness, that they are exposing these accelerated risks. Whether there's something akin to almost like an organic food certification for the shift in agriculture, so you could have water marked on an alfalfa or whatever the derivative product is, water conserved agriculture or water conserved produce. Because, and then with symbols about, just like you have with nutrition facts labels, something that shows that year on year, the farmers are transitioning to less water absorptive or taxed demanding crops. So as to create that market force of awareness, the crops could probably be better quality because they're stored differently, with also, climate advantaged refrigeration, so that they have a different shelf life, a better shelf life, and therefore can be higher quality and cheaper. This is worked in indigenous communities, the Inuit in Alaska, in terms of conserving their fish for longer, so the last one. But I thought, your attention to the attention deficit that the consumer has, that people have, that Norm certainly has been, trying to address forever. But hitting it hard with social media, hitting it hard with branding would be really, really great. So thanks for your work.
Thank you. Very proud of all of you. Thank you, Norma, for bringing the new soccer team that we need here. Now, you nailed it. At the beginning, I said, we had a question, what's your footprint, right? You touched on that. We only, just the water issue, but this is very powerful, the message to anybody. What is your footprint here? And you're just touching water, and we can escalate. So I'm very proud of the work, all of you, and I'm going to thank everybody for really putting a lot of effort here. I mean, for New Mexico, New Mexico City, so this will make a big difference. This is something that I will ask for your permission to use this and disseminate it within UNM and other communities. Because this, it's, I don't know, you've heard about the definition of what is a consultant, right? You're asking for the time, and the consultant will look at your watch and give you the time. Yeah. It's the best thing for somebody from the outside to come and tell you what is really obvious. This should be obvious for us, but it isn't. So you have raised the awareness, and thank you for the work. We're going to open the eyes of many people, and that's how I see it. And I'm, like I said, very proud. Also very proud because you're from Argentina. I was educated in Argentina, so I like it. Thank you.